I'm Coach Dave. Welcome back to Coach's Corner.
Come on.
Welcome to another episode of Coach's Corner. I'm Coach Dave McDonough. Today, we're going to kind of switch it up a little bit. You know, we've had everybody from the boxing world today, but I'm bringing my friend Jose Corpas, boxing historian turned author, and we're going to talk about his new book, Four Belt Era. So, Jose, I really welcome you for coming up here, taking your time out to come on. I know you were here with Neil Polona, the Tough Tony team, and we've been
Still wearing the shirt.
Yep, we're wearing the shirt, repping the brand. Welcome to Coach's Corner again, and congratulations. I know you're busy with kind of promoting your book, and you were unbelievably with all your facts when we had the Tough Tony team up here.
Yeah.
I mean, we had to get you back up here, and just you're a wealth of knowledge in the boxing world. So, again, congratulations. We wish you a lot of success here going forward. But let's jump into it.
Let's have some fun.
Have a little fun, right? We were talking about the book prior. Mm-hmm. It was in the process of being dropped and everything. But let's talk about how the idea came about and then the journey through the book. Because, I know a little bit about your story in the boxing world and everything with Neil's uncle, Tony Polone.
Yeah.
But you're probably one of the guys out there today that knows more about not only boxing in the mainstream, but the not so mainstream part of this sport.
I know some things. Yeah, I don't know what everyone else knows, but from a young age they teach you. I guess it's just being street smart. You have good eyes and good ears, and good memory. That's really all it is. I listen to people though too. You can learn a lot from just about anybody.
Right.
Yep, you can learn a lot.
So you were around Tony Polone later in his career.
That was my buddy. Not in his career, in his life.
In his life.
Yeah,
I meant to say, excuse me. But you're also around the sport of boxing too.
My older brother was an amateur boxer, and I used to tag along to the gym. I was about 6 or 7 years old, and I would wait on the side. And he was training for the Golden Gloves, or it might have been Empire State Games. I don't remember. And he was trained by Jose Resto. Right, his brother is more famous for the gloves,
yes,
right? Excuse me. So Jose Resto used to fight, but he would train guys on the side.
Louis Resto was his brother, correct?
Louis Resto's the one that got arrested with the Tampered gloves.
Yes,
against Billy Collins, I think his name, right?
I think so.
With Panama Lewis, that whole scandal in 1983. So this had to be around 77 or so. Right, because I remember John Candelaria had pitched a no-hitter, so whatever year that was. Because John Candelaria lived in the neighborhood, right?
Another Brooklyn guy.
We knew his mom, Felicia, right? So whether he was on the Pirates, it didn't matter what team he was on. We were rooting for John Candelaria, and so I used to hang out in the gym. I'm 6 years old, and I'm bumping shoulders with Edwin Vito, Villamar Fernandez, Sal Manby, Carmelo Negron. I don't know what I'm doing there, right? I remember they used to just come up and give me a hot dog, right? With a little mustard, whatever old hot dog they had there.
That's the dynamic of New York boxing back in the day. And even then, like, you don't know who's in the gym. These guys were in the gym.
You know who gave me the hot dog? Freddie Brown.
Okay.
So yeah, I wish I could go back with like a cell phone and
with
record
the camera, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, but I have a memory, and luckily I retained about 75% of what I experienced. So I listened to everyone, and I used to hear stories, right? And my father was a big fight fan, right? Tony Gennaro was friends of my family, right? And we know Tony Gennaro from. So
I had his great grandson in the gym today training.
I got to
Jack.
show you. Yes, Jack.
Yeah. So
just last week, one of my cousins, my father's cousins, saw that I released a book, right? And she saw I was doing all this boxing stuff. So she said, I'm going to send you a Joe Louis autograph, right? So Joe Louis signed an autograph for her grandfather, who's my grandmother's brother. And he signed it to Alex, Joe Louis, the champ, whatever it was, right? So I got it. I got a Joe Louis autograph. But Tony Gennaro brought Joe Louis over to the house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's how. And apparently Tony Gennaro used to hang out with Jackie Robinson also.
Wow.
Yep.
See, it ties, and it's funny. I'm just while you're on while you're on the term of Tony Gennaro, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, his granddaughter,
Right.
Tracy, right,
Sure.
and I'm training now their son, correct. So we're talking.
Who looks real good, by the way.
Thank you.
For
He's only 13 years old.
He's letting those punches go like almost like Felix Trinidad, almost the way he's going straight like that.
Yeah, I think we had him in the gym. We're talking to him today. So when I first started with him, he was 130 pounds. He's only 13. He's going to be 14 August 1st.
He's kind of tall, though.
He's 141 now. He's growing. So we're talking, and I kind of assimilate him to a young Thomas Hearns, that lanky, powerful, But anyway, I'm talking to his mom, and, she's getting her hair done.
Right.
And she's in this beauty salon, and the woman hears her talking about boxing.
I heard this story.
You heard the story.
Yeah.
She ran into Ray Arcel's
granddaughter. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So boxing is just like
it's around us.
It's just who you meet, how you meet them. Not only fighters, people associated with the sport.
Yep.
I've met so many different people.
Yeah.
Through you guys, Brown's boxing cards now.
Great cards, yeah.
Just so many different people. But all right, back in the gym there.
So I started meeting all these guys, and there used to be an old fighter. He used to play dominoes with my grandparents. Later, I find out it's Pedro Montanez, who fought Henry Armstrong and Lou Ambers.
Oh wow,
Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
and he's right there drinking coffee from the same cups we drink, right? And it's funny, I connected with his family now. I'm friends with his granddaughter now. So without even thinking about the future, without even knowing what was going on, I was already absorbing all this information. Exactly.
Well, and for us, because we are a little older, you and I, you're a little younger than me, but, in coming out of the same era, we had to. We didn't have cell phones or recorders or computers to go back. So any of her recollection, and like you, my dad was a fight guy. He would name fights I'm like, how do you even know about that fighter?
Really?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Back in the day, and he would love to have talked to you about this. But yeah, we had to look. As a coach, I go back, and I've been in camp with a lot of different people. No phone, and I would go back to my hotel room and write notes. And I have notebooks
to this day.
I have notebooks of certain camps who was there.
Gotcha.
With Manny Stewart. I was in the camp with him. And as a young kid, I'll put it to you this way as New York guys, whether you were a Giant fan, a Dodger fan, or a Yankee fan, to me, it was like Mickey Mantle. That was the level of watching him. But I would go back to the hotel and write notes of what he talked about. And I still have that book.
Which book was, your
My
notes?
personal notes of him. I actually, in a fight, we fought in the Garden, his nephew, Sugar Hill.
Yeah.
And we were talking. I actually, it was my fight. We actually beat his fighter. And after the fight, we were talking, and I told him the story. It was like he couldn't. And I said, I still have the book of my notes.
Great. How old is it? Like 30 years old, you said?
Maybe from 07, 06.
Almost 20 years already, yeah.
But anyway, back to...
So this book, Four Belt Era, but I spelled era, ERROR, right? We can't have four champs. It goes against the definition of what champion is. But whatever, it's a lost battle, right? Get used to it. We may get 7 champs soon. But 2 things triggered me to write this book. Number one, I saw a fight being advertised as a unification match. It was 2 interim titles. They were hyping it up as a unification match, which I thought was kind of ridiculous, but whatever, right? That's their promoter's tool, right? And then I saw Ring Magazine had an article, right? Now, I don't read Ring Magazines as much as I used to, right? Back when Randy Gordon and Bert Sugar had it. Exactly, yeah. So I read it, and they had an article. Someone wrote the definitive, that's what they called it, the definitive list of the greatest Italian boxers, right? Whether it's Italian, American, Italy, right? So there was a lightweight, welterweight from the 1930s. You ever heard of a guy named Billy Petro?
Heard of the name.
They went to the top 15, and then they had a list of honorable mentions. And they said the reason why they kept Billy Petro off the list was because he never won a title. So that to me is like, sounds, all right, let's switch it up to NBA a little bit. We're in New England. You ever heard of a basketball player named Bill Russell?
Yes, sir.
Is it safe to say he should be on the top 15 of all time?
I would put top 10.
Easily?
Easily.
Right? Maybe top 5, right?
Agreed.
Now, what if I tell you he never scored a three-pointer in his life? Would you still want to put him on that list?
100%.
How come?
6 rings.
10 rings, I think, actually.
10?
But they didn't have three-pointers in the NBA at that time. So Ring Magazine would have kept him off the top 15 list because he never scored a three-pointer. Three-pointers didn't start till 1981.
And he couldn't dunk at times early in his career. They weren't allowed to dunk, I believe.
Oh, they weren't allowed to dunk. Okay.
If you watch the documentary on it,
Yeah.
that's why
Couldn't touch the rim?
if you see him and he talks about it going up
Okay.
and how he lays it in a lot and he lays it up for the
So we
layup.
shouldn't penalize him for that. If you want to rate, first of all, it's kind of hard to rate errors, right? Anyway, but if you want to rate it, you can't omit someone from the past because he didn't do something that is in vogue today, right? Now, they included guys on that top 15 list because they won belts. Now, Billy Petro's got like 180 fights, right? He's beaten Hall of Famers like Tony Canzoneri, Jimmy McLaurin, Jackie Kid Berg. I don't even have to continue, right? If you know the history of boxing, that's Mickey Mantle level, right? Now, if Petro fought on a day like today, he would have had a bunch of belts. So we don't have any reference to compare the two. So what I did was I went back to the very first rankings, gave the top 4 guys belts, and followed their careers. So when they lost, whoever they lost to became the new champ. And every once in a while, I would have interims and supers and regulars. And now we got a picture of what it kind of looks like. And now we could kind of compare apples to apples a little bit. And I know a lot of guys that vote for the Hall of Fame. And same thing, they feel that everyone who's in, whoever's not in is because they shouldn't be in, right? And they kind of look at they'll look at a guy like Tony Pallone and say, well, he never won a belt. How good was he? Which is a foolish argument because that's like saying Bill Russell never scored a three-pointer.
So, you talk about the Hall of Fame and, through family association, I was related to Joey Archer. He's not in the Hall of Fame.
He should be in the Hall of Fame. He's a champ now in my book.
Okay,
and he's got a better record than some of the guys that are in.
Okay,
now.
let's take that into, because you're a boxing guy. Let's take his record. Great record.
Pull it up. What is it like?
I think
4
it was
losses,
I think
48?
it was 45 and 4 or something like that, or 48 and 4.
Yeah.
But let's look at boxing pedigree. Fought Griffin twice for the belt within a year.
I think he's the only guy. He beat Ray Robinson too. Right?
Robinson's last fight, he beat Robinson.
Yeah, isn't he?
That was Robinson's last fight. He beat him. I think it was 67 in the Garden.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't prime Robinson, but it counts, though.
Listen,
right.
You know what? You're right. But, we're going to go back in 10 years from now and people talk about Sugar Ray Robinson. People know Robinson was a great fighter. Boxing people, non-box.
Yeah.
Somebody who beats him, yeah, okay. You beat him at the end of his career, but you still beat him. But all that aside, if you look at his skill set as a boxer.
Joey Archer?
Yeah.
One of the best boxers.
To me, you're saying, at any athlete, maybe you don't win titles or you're not, the Michael Jordans, the Kobes, the LeBrons, the Derek Jeters, the mainstream guys out there. But, man, you contributed to the sport.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's something we need to talk about, you and I, afterwards, that I want to bend your ear on. But, so, I mean, I kind of like looking at boxing right now, what you have done here. And it's so many, look, we understand money, belts, unifications, You
need them now. You can't get on TV without a belt.
You can't get a mainstream fight unless you're running a contender or to fight for the green, right? So to me, and I'll ask you, to me as a coach and as a boxing fan, the WBC green belt is the belt. That to me is the Q Essentials, Super Bowl, NBA Finals, World Series. You carry that belt. and no disrespect to any other organizations or fighters who have belts. No disrespect. That's the one I want if I'm a fighter or if I'm a coach.
Yeah. I mean, I like the WBC because of their WBC Cares, that program. Jill Diamond, Mauricio are very generous. I've heard of them paying people's rents, medical bills. I think they're the only ones that actually have a team of doctors looking into health standards and trying to raise the health standards in the sport. My only thing is I no longer look at the sanctioning bodies as the definition of what a champ is, right? It's just the word doesn't mean anything anymore in boxing. Champ, you got 6, 7 guys in some division. Usyk should be the only heavyweight champ, right? But now you want to say Manuel Chaw, Daniel Dubois, all right, whatever. Now, it ain't, champ don't mean what it used to mean. So that's fine. Like I said, did you ever buy a used car?
Yes.
So anyone under 25 or 30 never bought a used car. They bought what?
They either leased.
No, a pre-owned car.
Pre-owned car.
Yeah, so we're changing the definitions of things. So whatever. Yeah. I'm not trying to change the boxing world, but I want more respect on the fighters of the past because too many guys, Ring Magazine, shame on them for allowing that. Billy Patrol, if Joe Calzaghe fought back then, and I love Joe Calzaghe, I as a trainer or as a coach, I'm not so sure I could think of a style to beat him, right? But I don't know that he would have won a belt if he fought in the same years as Billy Petro.
Yeah, we can have that conversation.
We can have it. He might not have gotten the title shot.
A lot of people we could have that conversation with.
But we shouldn't disqualify one over the other for that reason. Exactly.
No, I agree with you. And it's just, look, the sport now with all these belts, and my opinion is, look, we have boxing has become more global than ever. Okay? Mm-hmm. You have promotional companies overseas, over the pond, however you want to say it. Mm-hmm. Frank Warren, Matchroom, Turk now, and these guys have a lot of money. They're not just doing it. They want their champions. They're weighing in. They're bringing some more publicity to the sport right now, more so than ever. Okay, once again, you talk about Usyk should be the only heavyweight champ. We don't have a heavyweight champ in the United States anymore. They're getting like a legit heavyweight champ. Like one guy, like Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, okay, Larry Holmes, we can go on and on and on. Joe Frazier back in the day. And, I don't want to go past them because that's my era right there. Mm-hmm. But, money moves the fight game.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, money moves the fight game. And you know what? No disrespect against Daniel Dubois. He is not a champion in my eyes. He's a champion by default right now.
He got a belt.
He's got a belt. Yeah, but he's got a belt because his promotional company believes in him. They're going to put him in a big time fight.
No, he's doing well, man. I mean, he's on a really nice comeback.
Yeah, he is. He is. But you know what? Maybe it's timing for him, and God bless him. But I don't know. I think
Yeah, because you got the old school definition. So that's out the window now. Everyone's a champ. Fine. We might as well just stop calling them contenders, right, and just make everyone a champ.
Well, how about this? I'm going to ask you a question, right? We know in boxing, right, the rematch. You fight, you lose. Do you feel trilogies should keep happening? So, like, after a contender wins a title.
Yeah, like Floyd Patterson, Johansson. They held up the title for 2 years.
And then not hold it, but let's talk about, we'll say Fury and Wilder. Do you want to continue fighting the third and the fourth time after that? Or it's 2, you get your rematch, you get your shot. Whoever wins the rematch is done. There shouldn't be another fight after that.
I mean, if the fights are close and there's no other better fight, I don't have a real problem with it.
Right.
The thing is, though, nowadays these guys are fighting once a year. So now, if you're gonna have a trilogy, and then who's getting a crack at the belt now in those 3 years?
Yeah, it just kind of locks it up.
Yeah, it locks it up. So if you need see, back in the day, they had the solution for that. They didn't call them world champions, but they called them NABF champ, right? The North American champ. If you were a heavyweight, if you were the South American heavyweight champ, that was big news when you came to the United States, anywhere in the world. Alfredo Evangelista made a very good living in Europe as a former South American champ. But let's go down the list. First South American champ, Louis Firpo, was a star when he arrived, right? Victoria Campolo. Let's move down. Arturo Godoy, Gregorio Peralta, right up until Bernardo Mercado. Remember that name, Bernardo Mercado, Colombian guy? Yeah, of course. We knew the name because he was South American champ. We didn't have to call him interim WBA regular. We didn't need that.
But we also, you and I grew up in the era of, wide world of sports. And when these guys came from Europe,
right,
South America, Latin America,
right,
Russia, England, these guys were fighters, man. Like, we might not have known them mainstream like everybody knows today, but you knew when that guy came in.
Exactly.
He was somebody at this point. He wasn't a watered down guy that we just picked.
Correct. There was certain validity if you were the South American champ, right? If you were the champ of Cuba. Oh, yeah, exactly. Nino Valdez, Julio Medeiros. They were not necessarily the best in the division, but now they have to put the world title tag on everybody. That's just what they're doing now, and I don't know that they can promote without that.
No, I don't think so.
Unless you got Turkey money. Turkey seems to be the only one that can put on.
Listen, the other factor comes into the business of boxing is you're a promoter, you're a manager, and you get offered a fight. Okay, the fight's got to make sense, number one, financially and movement-wise for you. You're not going to take a chance unless a guy's holding some credibility, because if you're a rising contender here, for say, and you're going to fight somebody as an up-and-comer, or maybe he holds some sort of belt from his country, or whatever the case may be, some small unified belt, you need that to move up to get a better fight yourself.
That's the business model now. You can't break it.
Yeah.
You have to do that.
I mean, the only person that broke it, I think, and I don't know, I think Lomachenko broke it. I don't think we'll see it again, because he had very little fights and was fighting for world titles right away.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember when he first came on the scene.
He wanted his pro debut to be a world title fight. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's fine. That's today's motto. I'm not knocking today's motto. Listen, I don't care I don't want to get in anybody's pockets, right? If they need to call it the Tinkerbell Championship of the World, then call it the Tinkerbell Championship of the World, right? Whatever it takes. I like boxing. I want to see more boxing. I want to see more fights. I want these guys to get better paid. But when these Hall of Fame voters or these Ring Magazine experts go to the past and say, well, he wasn't that good. He never won a belt. He must not have been that good. That's what I have a problem with, because now you got, number one, you got more divisions. We're talking about now, how many divisions? 17? Yeah, we don't even know anymore, right? Amateurs, women, they all got a different amount.
Right? It's hard to say.
Let's say 15.
Yeah.
And there's almost no division has 4 champs, right, with the interims and all of that. So let's say 15 times 5. You got 75 champs. We go back 50 years, you only had 8 champs. So you can't hold against the guys that didn't become champ. Tony Pallone never got a title shot, right? If he did, maybe he would have been champ. Maybe not. Now, the title was frozen because of World War II for much of his prime. And then you had a beast named Sugar Ray Robinson who was champ. So how are you gonna become champ, right? No one's gonna beat Ray Robinson. He was unbeaten under middleweight.
And if you talk to people today, right, and look, from when you guys were on the first podcast about Tony Pallone and his life, and I did his research, the amount of fights in the short amount of time in his career, whether he got a title shot or not, people aren't fighting like that today.
No.
We, like I said, we'll go back to Joey Archer. Joey Archer fought Griffith within a year.
Yeah.
He lost the title and then fought him again.
Yeah.
And if you know by doing research, Tony Pallone too, look at his box rec. Guy was fighting every 3-4 weeks. Fighting once, twice a month at least, not turning fights around. Like you said before, look, that title gets frozen for a year after a title fight.
I know.
It takes so long now to make fights happen. Venues making sense, I get it. Everything is a big promotion today. I understand that, but these guys, whether they fought for titles or not, they were fighting so much as opposed to today.
So if you look at the heavyweights right now, it's almost the way Turkey's promoting them. Well, the way they're matching them up. Let me say the way they're matching them up. Remember the 1970s?
Yes.
You could put the top 10 from any year of the 1970s, and almost 6 or 7 of them all fought each other, right? So Ron Lyle, Jerry Quarry, Jimmy Young, Ernie Shavers, Ken Norton, Ali, Frazier, Foreman, they all fought each other. And we're seeing a little bit of that, but, you know, they only fight once or twice a year. But Zili Zhang, he's not sitting around waiting for a title shot, right? He's fighting Joe Parker. He's fighting Deontay Wilder.
And he's back in the gym now.
And he's back in the gym, yeah.
So he's looking for another shot.
Look at Joseph Parker.
Look at Joe. Okay, so we're talking about Joseph Parker, right? That's because yes, this is the 70s and the early 80s,
yes,
where
exactly.
that same pool of heavyweights were there, right?
Right.
A lot of talent.
Yes.
There was a lot of talent in that heavyweight division. You know, you had a man named Muhammad Ali at the top.
Right.
You know, George Foreman was rising.
Yep.
Kenny Norton, Quarry.
Yep.
Mike Weaver.
Joe Frazier.
Larry
Holmes.
Holmes.
Yep.
Holmes was Ernie Shavers.
Yep.
There's more.
There's a whole bunch more.
Okay.
Jerry Quarry, Jimmy Young.
Yeah, Jimmy Young.
Ron Lyle.
Right? So
we're leaving a few out, but that's Oscar Bonavena.
Joe Parker reinvented himself.
Yeah. And Daniel Dubois did too.
And, you know, I got a little close association to both. I had fighters that fought both of them, you know. And, you know, watching Parker beat Wilder, I was in that camp, in Wilder's camp. Okay. And I thought Wilder, when he broke camp, I was like, this is a different guy. But Joseph Parker is just, you know, I like stories like him. Here's a guy that, you know, they gave him everybody to fight over there. Yeah. He fought, had some success, had no success.
A couple of losses. But,
you know what I mean? Was pretty much maybe 1 foot out the door in boxing legitimately.
And that shows you how different it was in the 1930s and the 1940s, where a loss didn't end you. Sometimes, do you remember when trainers used to want their fighter to have a loss? Because it made them better.
I don't remember
Well,
that.
I mean, it was one of the best learning tools is when a guy could bounce back from a loss. And you can't do that now because it's going to kill you financially.
It will. But, you know, from a trainer's aspect, this is the way I look at that situation, right? There are some fights that fighters take where they know they're not supposed to win. It's a build-up fight for the A-side fighter.
A lot of fighters,
to make him look good, right? And you're coming in, you have a good record, you have a good pedigree, you know. So as a trainer, you go into that, I think, like, that's a win-win for a guy because, one, they're not expecting you to beat that fight.
No pressure almost.
Okay? But if you go in and lose and look good and hold your own,
it's a win. It's a
win.
As winning. Yeah.
There's a win right there. So I'll take that as a loss, as a win type of thing like that, because, you know, it's like it's like the Yankees playing a minor league team. The minor league team is not supposed to beat the top club, right?
No,
so you're coming in like that, but you know, it's just now the pool. Like you go back, okay. The heavyweight division I'll talk about in the 70s is guys from Russia came over. Those were fights. Guys from Cuba came over. Those were fights. China, so-so, but they were fights. You know, Germany, if we fought Germany, those were fights with these guys going back and forth. But, you know, some of these guys can reinvent themselves. So, like, we saw the heavyweight division. We saw Ali lose to Frazier. We saw Frazier, you know, Ali come back and beat Frazier. We saw Kenny Norton break Ali's jaw out of nowhere. We seen Jerry Cooney annihilate Norton in a round. Larry Holmes, who was Ali's sparring partner, and a lot of people, like you talk to boxing people don't realize who Larry Holmes was. You know, Larry Holmes was playing second fiddle to the man for
Joe Frazier sparring partner too for a while. Yeah.
So, you know, like we see it go round and round and round and round. But now, no, you're not going to see that because fighters are going to pick and choose unless it's, like you said, maybe a close fight, a big venue fight where the matchmakers, the venue put you into that fight. And then as a fighter, today the money is ridiculous. So how do you turn it down?
No, it's a lottery. So you got to do what you have to do, right? You only get one career. But if they were able to get decent money, if a loss didn't affect their earnings too much, you would see a lot more fighters like Daniel Dubois bouncing back and Zili Zhang. It's in everyone. You don't get defeated. It's just a bad night, right? And you can come back. Now, most of the time, right? Sometimes it's a bad beating, right?
Yeah,
that you never
unless,
recover from.
Unless you're getting banged up, I
Right,
agree. If you're,
right.
some of these fighters today, look, they're better conditioned, they're better trained, there's better networks for their recovery, they're taking care of themselves better.
Yeah.
They're living the life of a fighter, whereas years ago, some of these fighters had to go work jobs. They were just continuously hurt because they had, Tony Pallone had to feed his family.
I think his nose was broken for like 6 fights in a row at one time. Yeah, They
So
just kept resetting it.
but that's how he made his money at the time. And there were tons of fighters like that. They weren't calling in sick.
No, you couldn't. That's why I went back and we're gonna give them a little bit of love by giving them the titles that everyone has today. So now he's not the former #1 contender of the world. What's it say on the cover?
4-belt era, 4-time champion.
4-time champion, 2 divisions. Yep. He earned it. We're going by today's definitions. Because by yesterday's definitions, the #7 guy in the world is not the heavyweight champ. Now, I don't even know, Manuel Char, has he got a belt? He has some belt, right?
Might have for a
And
little while.
He's not one of the 10 best, right? He's
No.
barely. I don't even think he cracks the top 10. But he's a champion in today's definition. Right? So the word has just become something else. And too many people, and I don't blame the casual fan, right? As long as they keep coming to the fights, fine. But when experts in the field who are deciding who goes in the Hall of Fame, who are writing the definitive articles in Ring Magazine, are holding against the guys of the past because they didn't win belts. This guy, Harry Greb, would have been heavyweight champ if you follow his record. Beat Tommy Gibbons, beat Kid Norfolk, beat a lot of heavyweights. And if we had as much belts back then, he would have ended up, how many title fights? Did you notice?
No,
Open up,
what do you
just
got
to give
him
the
on?
readers a little bit. I have a chart there of who would have had the most title defenses. Go to page 90.
Which one are you in? No, I got different one?
Oh, you got that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
This one has a few extra pages because there's some bios on Pallone.
So you got your charts, everything. I mean, this is
100 on that one.
This is a great read.
Go to page
For
100.
So most title defenses was Harry Grib at 151, Robinson second at 105, Benny Leonard was third at 93, Jimmy Wild, there's a name, number 4 at 91, and Ezra Charles as 5 at 83. And then Sam Langford, number 6 at 80, Henry Armstrong, 74, Joe Gaines and Mike Gibbons had 73, Kid Norfolk 64, and rounding it off at 10 was Kid Chocolate at 63.
So it looks very different now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, today's fighters can't compete with those numbers. No one's fighting 150 times.
No.
Right? But, I mean, you keep going. Look, turn the page. There's more. Johnny Dundee, Harry Wills. Harry Wills never was even given a title shot, right?
Yeah.
Now, if we had belts down there, he'd be a champ. So that's basically what I did. I went back, gave everyone titles. Now you look at the pages before, for example, page 97. It looks like
Champions beaten. Most champions beaten. Ray Robinson, 52. Harry Grib, 49. Henry Armstrong, 37. Archie Moore. I mean, that's a class. That class right there. And Jimmy McLaren rounds it off as 5th.
Yeah.
I mean, those names are just unbelievable.
They're incredible, yeah. And then on the next page...
I mean, and just not to cut you off here, right? Most boxing people, they'll know who Harry Grib is, right? But the mainstream boxing people won't. They'll know Ray Robinson. They'll know Sugar Ray. They'll have heard that name as one of the... But here's Harry Grib. He beat 49 champions.
Yeah. And if I would have went Wilder with the interims...
3 less than Ray Robinson.
Yeah. I know.
I mean, that's...
No,
I mean, if you look at that class right there, Robinson being the best, right? Yeah. Because that's the name, right? Everybody remembers. Look at Jimmy McLaren rounding it off at 5th with 34 champions.
No, he's a special fighter. Yeah.
And these are people that, Us boxing people will know. We're the
Yeah,
mainstream.
it's a shame. It's a shame because most casual baseball fans have heard of Babe Ruth.
Correct.
Right?
Lou
They have
Gehrig,
heard of
Babe
Hank
Ruth,
Aaron,
yeah.
right? Now, maybe they didn't hear of Trispika, right? You ever heard of Trispika?
I've heard of Trispika.
Right. So you got to be a little bit more of a baseball nerd, right, to know that. But they're aware of Willie Mays. They're aware of Lou Gehrig. And boxing is falling apart now. I mean, you got writers on Ring Magazine disqualifying guys because they didn't win something that didn't exist back then. That's like saying your father wasn't a great texter on the cell phone, right? He didn't know. Yeah, there were no cell phones back then. So I can't think of a nice word. It's ridiculous.
But let's touch on that, Jose, for a second here, because look, boxing is a unique sport, right? With a lot of history in boxing. Not only as the fight game, as a political aspect of the game, we could talk about fights that had political value.
There's a whole bunch of them. I'm thinking about doing an article just on that.
Yeah, I mean, so we can go back and forth. But one thing, and I've talked to people about this at every level of boxing right now. The people who knew boxing and know the sport, and look, boxing had beat writers back in the day.
They had great writers.
They
back
had
in the
announcers
day.
that everybody wrote about their local fighters.
It was
and
beautiful.
you just made a point of guys in Ring Magazine that write an article. Half these guys don't even go to fights.
Ring Magazine, true, and Ring Magazine is starting to put out AI articles now, artificial intelligence. Yeah.
And you know what? That's great. I think some information AI is great.
It's fine
AI
for certain
is
things.
great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there's nothing like
doesn't replace them.
How do you talk about a fighter? Okay, and I never saw him. I know you met him later. Tony Pallone. How does somebody talk about a fighter like that unless you really saw him? You could tell the history of him, but like today, a writer writing from home, maybe not knowing who he is, man, if you go into that ring and you see who he is, that's like saying, how do you talk about Satchel Paige in baseball unless you saw him play?
Well, you could do it. You got an imagination. Yeah, you could tell me who won the Civil War, right? Right, you weren't there though. You don't have pictures of it, but you know who won the Civil War, right?
But there's also my point coming back to boxing is knowing the sport, knowing the fighters, knowing the little in betweens of really what's going on, who's a fan favorite, who's a local guy, what that guy's story is he fighting for rent? Is he fighting because he's comfortable?
100%.
What is he? Yeah. What is he fighting for?
Did he just come out the hospital? Right.
Yeah. We're not passing.
Right.
My point being is we're not passing knowledge from the writers, even as trainers right now.
No.
Okay. I'm 62 years old. I've been around some great mentors in my day.
Okay.
I've been very blessed to watch, to listen, and I'm still blessed. There are some great young coaches out there today. There really is. Okay. But we're losing a lot of the tradition in this sport. No one's handing it down.
No, very few people, and it's a shame because there's an old African idiom that says when an old man dies, it's like a library burning to the ground, right? And too many people are not sharing that knowledge, or they're not bothering to learn the right knowledge. They're either lazy or disinterested, or I don't know what it is, man. Just be careful with what you're doing. Don't rush anything, and get the story as accurately as possible.
I'm going to give you a little thing right here, right? AI is a great tool, but AI is not going to be able to tell me the stories you just told me
AI
about.
Doesn't know
about the guys
some of the
you were
things I
playing
know.
dominoes, Freddie Brown handing you a hot dog.
Exactly.
Like, these are guys, right? We knew growing up, certain guys.
Right.
And if you walked into the gym, well, let's put it this way. I'll put it very simple, right? You walk to the basketball court in your neighborhood and Michael Jordan's down there shooting swishes.
Yeah.
And you get to hang out with him throughout. Like, that is not going to happen no more.
No.
Never going to happen no more. Boxing, it did.
It can,
And it still can because Jose, you've been around the sport. You go to events, and you meet, and boxing guys, to me, I've been around all types of athletes and people, and like yourself, right? Boxing guys are the most humblest guys. Like, they're the most approachable athlete.
They're regular
out there.
guys. They don't walk around with bodyguards. Well, maybe one or two do, but they're regular people. They never seem to really forget where they come from, and they're blue collar guys. Is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't. Yeah, you got to talk to them. You could approach them and listen. I've never seen this in writing. Right. My buddy Vito Antofermo, right? He told me when he fought Haggler the first time, the Petronellis were 100% convinced that Haggler was going to win. So they let Vito's cut man, Freddie Brown, whatever, Freddie, use whatever, right? So Vito told me he got 61 stitches that night.
Because Vito cut like crazy.
But you didn't see him bleeding in the first Haggler fight because Freddie was able to use whatever he had in his
pocket. I gotta go back
pocket.
to that one and watch that one.
Right, but in the rematch, they got hip to it, and they put the handcuffs on Freddie Brown. Says, no, you can't use that, or that. So Vito's dripping, pouring blood all over the place, right? AI is not going to know a story like that.
So I'm going to tell you a story. You might not even know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm at work this week, right? And this is boxing, right?
Right.
So the kid I'm training, right? It's from Massachusetts, Boston area. He goes, yeah, my dad was a fighter. I was a little bit of a, who's your dad? He goes, my dad's name was, I believe his name was Doug Bradford. Bradford was his name.
Okay.
He had 3 pro fights, cup of coffee for the Boston. But he fought Marvin Haggler in prison.
Oh, really?
So Marvin Haggler, somewhere in his career in that area, right, he fought him in one of the prisons in there at an exhibition.
Nice.
So I'm trying to put together all the information here to kind of put something together here.
Yeah.
Never heard that story. Like you hear stories about, Hurricane Carter, Hopkins in prison, fighting, even the possibility of Tyson fighting when he was in prison.
True. Yeah.
So it's like, I find that like pretty cool as far as like a boxing thing.
We wouldn't think of Haggler in prison, period. Yeah.
Yeah, so, but back to the book.
Yep.
How long did it take for you you came up with the idea? And
about
then
6 months of writing. And,
Really?
How
long did it take for the idea to really say, I'm going to put this on pen to paper? Was it something that you toyed with for a while?
No. But maybe it was brewing. I was just getting annoyed of everyone going back. Like, all right, look at what how would you rate a great fighter? Like what criteria would you use?
A lot of,
Give me 2 or 3.
Obviously, skill set.
Skill, definitely one of the top ones.
Ahead of, everybody else. But I would like a great fighter that's an ambassador to the game.
Okay, cool. I was looking for, I agree with those two. I'll throw in quality of opponents.
Absolutely.
Right? The competition.
Yes.
Right? Because you could go, like, remember Vinnie Pazienza fought a guy from Peru, Nelson Bolanos?
Yes, I do.
And then Nelson Bolanos was 52-0, with 1 draw, whatever they were hyping him to be. And Vinnie said, I don't care if he fought his grandma 52 times, she would have got lucky at least once, right? So 52-0, Vinnie could have went 52-0 if he fought those same 52 guys, right? Right?
100%.
Yeah, Arturo Gatti, all of them. A lot of guys would have went 52-0 with those same opponents. So who you're beating, I think, is very important. So I would have added that to your list. So,
I agree on that. And and just in the defense of some guys just don't have the pool to fight that quality of level.
And that's when skill comes, right? So we got other criteria, right?
100%.
So we'll use Pallone as an example, right? Now, give me somebody that just got into the Hall of Fame. Any name.
Vinnie Paz.
So how many Hall of Famers did Vinnie Paz beat? He got Roberto Duran, but that was a very old
Later
Duran.
on.
Yeah.
Roger Mayweather's not a Hall of Famer.
No, not. But he didn't beat him, though, anyway.
Yeah.
That might be it, right? I can't think
the
of
French
anyone
guy was not a Hall of Famer.
Nah, Gilbert DeLay.
Yeah.
Lloyd Honeyghan was not in the Hall of Fame.
I don't really think Vinnie beat any Hall of Famers to get in the Hall
Well, he
of
got
Fame.
Duran.
Okay. But you can't base a whole career on one guy at the end of, and not to take away from Vinnie Pazienza.
No, I love
guy.
Vinnie Paz. Yeah.
So do I.
Yeah.
Tough guy, everything else. He fought who they put in front of him.
Oh, a fantastic fight. He had no business fighting Roy Jones. Right? So, yeah. But now Pallone, how many Hall of Famers did he beat? He's got 3 wins of Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
Right? So now we got to say who had the better competition, right? This is a guy fighting Ike Williams, Kid Gavilan, Billy Graham, Bob Montgomery, right? So now, you're going to have more bumps and bruises going through that rather than Vinnie Paz's opponent. So let's get Pallone in the Hall of Fame. I got no problem with Vinnie Paz. He should got in years ago. But now I think this guy should be in too.
So here's a question for you, right? Make a great point here. As the years go on, no disrespect to Vinnie Paz.
No.
Guy was tough as nails.
One of the greatest comebacks ever.
100%.
Yeah.
People liked his story.
I think skill-wise, he was better than Arturo Gatti. I would say that.
Before he got hurt, I definitely would say he was better than Gatti.
Yeah.
I
Right?
definitely-
And no knock on Gatti.
Not a knock on Gatti.
Yeah.
Gatti was just a tough guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Buddy McGirt did a great job, but what he had to
He
work
made
with,
him. He brought him
made
up
him a better
level.
fighter.
Yeah, he made him.
Because Arturo wanted to bang and just sit there and bang. Okay,
Yeah, waiting for the knockout punch. Yeah,
exactly. But as we go on, time and time now, Hall of Fame, guys like Tony Pallone are starting to slip away into
exactly.
oblivion
Exactly.
in the sport that we know.
Right.
How does that change?
It might not. It might not change. I hope I did my part with something like this to try to keep the memory alive. We need more podcasts talking about it. We need better writers.
Because there's more guys than Tony Pallone out there.
Absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
and I know, you know.
And I highlight some of them in here.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
And you brought that out and everything else. But my point being, again, the history of baseball is not, we can go back to the 1900s, Shoeless Joe Jackson.
And that's changing now, too. You notice they started adding the stats of the Negro Leagues to the MLB stats, right?
I saw that. Now, I understand why.
So it's evolving, too, even the baseball history.
It is evolving, but
Right.
we're still not losing history because, honestly, forget the stats. There's still knowledge of what the Negro League was like.
Because they got better writers that
Again, we had
generous.
beat writers covering teams.
With their generous information.
right? Look, and every sport had the local writer.
Right.
We read the Daily News for years. We can go through them all, right? All the guys that wrote for the sports section.
Even the guys that weren't a boxing beat writer will put out gold. Guys like Pete Hamill, right? You know Pete Hamill?
I know Pete Hamill.
Fantastic writer. And boxing was blessed anytime Pete Hamill decided to write about boxing. Gay Talese, you recognize that name? Another guy.
He wrote Honor Thy Father. He wrote great books.
Yeah, him.
Great books.
He wrote a lot about boxing too.
But there were guys that were, look, like anything else, right? If you run a business as a manager, you can run a business, right? If it's selling ice cream or hot dogs.
Right.
But, writers know how to write. They know how to adapt, right?
Yeah.
You're either a good writer or you're not really.
Correct, right.
So you could adapt.
He could write about zebras in Africa if he wanted to.
And you can make it. I think one of the guys out there today who's good is I want to make sure I say is
Mark Kriegel?
Mark Kriegel.
Outstanding. How did I know you were going to say him?
Yeah, because I listened to him. I've seen some interviews with him. I know he just wrote something
About Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there was something else before that. So I think he's a great.
Ray Mancini's story.
Yeah, that's my guy.
A good son.
That's my guy, Ray.
That's right. Yeah. The good son. Yeah.
But the history, I think, is, and we're in an era where history can be pulled up. Man, you go on the internet, you can find
no excuse.
You can find videos, records, articles of a guy, and it's
From
awesome.
almost any country in the world.
It's awesome, right?
Yeah.
But the knowledge of the people talking about it, and you go to events, right? And this is like, I'm not an authority. I love the sport, and I'm a student of the game. So somebody's going to talk about the sport and I could learn something, great.
Of course.
But, we always hear the people like who really don't know anything about this sport.
Some people have too big of a platform and I hear what you're saying.
And they talk about it like it's you had a firsthand look. I've had a firsthand look. There's no disregard in a fighter. Anybody who steps in that ring, whether it's an amateur fight or a professional fight,
right?
There's something that you got to give credit to. It's
of
not
course.
You cannot just look, as good as a basketball player, baseball, football player, if you don't get the shot, you can't go on the professional level. You might be, okay, yeah, we heard about you in the playgrounds,
right.
But as a fighter, when you go and you have one professional fight or an amateur fight, there's a lot of work involved to get there.
It's so easy to turn back and find an excuse not to climb those steps.
And then, you talk, let's, we'll keep going back to Tony Pallone. The amount of fights,
Yeah.
like fighting, coming back, broken nose. There was probably other injuries.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
Yeah.
the mental aspect of, man, why am I doing this?
Yeah, you're taking a beating. Yeah.
You're taking a beating, right? You had to put food on the table.
Sure.
The money was okay, but the money's not like today. So, like, if we look at it from,
I mean, he made a decent living for
He
his
made a
time.
living.
But yeah,
He
but he
made a
wasn't
living. But a lot of guys like him
Yeah.
didn't make a living,
no.
you know?
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, it's kind of mind-boggling
Yeah.
when I hear that. So you put this thing together.
Tony Gennaro's a champ too, by the way.
Yeah.
There's no way he couldn't be. Basically, anyone in the top 6 is gonna end up with a
And
belt.
again, in those classes, like look at Gennaro, Jake LaMotta, Sugar,
Yeah.
they recycled each other. They had to fight each other constantly in that division going around.
Right. Yeah.
You know? But so when you got this going,
Mm-hmm.
talk to me about the process. Was it like wildfire and like, here you go?
So I didn't.
This is the first time you've done this, right? As a book, all right? Correct?
Yeah,
You've done
I
You never.
never.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like it wasn't like you were sitting here for years. I'm on my 10th book and I'm just gonna do something different. You came up with this idea.
I wasn't. This was. I was getting annoyed with these guys, and DAZN will put on some stat.
Yeah.
The first unified. No, it was not the first unified heavyweight champ, right? Every Ali fight was the undisputed heavyweight title. Every Sonny Liston fight was the undisputed. Every Joe Louis fight was undisputed, right? And they didn't have 16 different guys calling champs, so they didn't have all those belts. So
they didn't have 5 guys carrying your belts behind you.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was kind of it was getting to me. The quality and the bar of entry in boxing writing and boxing information, I felt was becoming a disservice in the long run, right? You don't have to exaggerate boxing. It's a great fight. You don't have to make it the first time in history, right? That doesn't add anything to the fight. Just like the guys at the weigh-ins, that push in and all that. I don't know. You think more people are buying the pay-per-view because of that? Maybe I don't know. Not enough,
I don't think
right?
so.
Yeah,
I think the pay-per-view is being bought on the hype of the fight anymore. I mean, honestly, I think boxing had to kind of take a page from UFC because UFC
or
is
WWE
or WWE because UFC was actually for combat sport. If you looked at their weigh-ins, they were drawing more people than boxing was in events at times, right? So it's Barnum and Bailey. You're promoting an event. You have to promote it.
You got to do it now. Yeah,
you got to do it. There's no, and we're global, right? We're boxing's global, right?
Well, it always was global,
but more so than ever because now of the networks, the internet, the stream. Look, years ago, you and I know, man, you couldn't watch a fight on TV. You were lucky if you got it on closed circuit at a movie theater. You'd have to
wait a week. Yeah,
you
exactly.
had to wait a week.
Yeah.
ABC popped it on TV, right? So now think about it, right? If we'll use David Dubois as an example. If you're a David Dubois fan, right, and you're here in the United States, you could actually watch his whole career unfold till he comes here and fights.
Yeah,
because there's networks or there's stream services or there's some sort of video that you can pick up and watch. So, yeah, the market is out there for that. I don't like the push-in. I'm an old school guy. Look, I don't have to like you, but we're going to war.
Yeah.
I'm doing my thing. You're trying to beat me, and I'm trying to beat you.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? At the end of the day, we can shake hands or we don't have to. But But you know what? I think it's still, to me, a gentleman's sport.
Yeah, it should be, of course, man. And it usually is. At the end of the fight, they most of the time embrace and congratulate each other.
And I mean, we go back into boxing, men wore suits, women wore dresses, and there weren't a lot of women at these big events, and it was a celebrity-studded event, and it still is. It still is, and I think that's important to the sport. But, now you're out there, and what's the response you're getting?
I mean, it just came out. So far, the little response that I got is mostly positive. It's a fun book. It's an enjoyable book. It's you can't take it too seriously. It's fiction. The 4 belts didn't exist back then.
Yeah, but I think it makes for good conversation.
Yeah,
all the time.
absolutely. It's
You
a
know,
nice
like
little
for,
debate.
For
Yeah.
boxing people, I think it's a good conversation.
It is for most people, unless some people, it might bother some people, right? Now, I was part of the process was I didn't want to bash the belts, right? I have a lot of friends who are referees and judges, and I know that they get paid more when there's a belt attached. I know the fighters get paid more. I know TV executives are less likely to touch a fight unless there's a belt attached, right? So, listen, if I was Mauricio Suleiman, I would be doing exactly what he's doing. I would be making more belts. There's as many as I can get away with. I would do it. You know, necessity. What's that? I'll give you a Ray Alcel quote. Starving monkeys eat hot peppers, right? So when you got to eat, you do whatever's around. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't have a huge problem with that. I'll go back to, I won't stray away from it. It's the historians and the Hall of Famers that are putting the fighters of the past on a different level because they're not taking that extra step to think, hey, that didn't exist back then. We can't hold that against them, right? You know, so I'm just trying to level the playing field. So I'm letting everyone know what it might have looked like had there been four champs.
It also gives, some, publicity to fighters who might not have gotten it. And it makes people think today. And look, the idea of the belts, I get it. The incentive for you to fight is to be a world champion. Every kid that goes into a gym, whether he's an amateur or an up-and-coming fighter, what do you want to be? I want to be a world champion.
Yeah.
That's the incentive.
Yeah.
Okay, Maurice Suleiman with the WBC, look, I think their heart and their ideas are in a good spot of what they want to do with the sport.
Yep.
With this Grand Prix right now, I think it's a great idea.
They're trying, yeah.
You know what I mean? They're trying to keep it relevant.
Right.
And they're trying to give guys incentive to keep fighting, to keep training for the sport, and to make a living.
Yeah.
Whereas okay, years ago, guys fought, they didn't make a living, barely, or anything else like that.
Very, the percentage is way off. The ones making a living was such a small percentage.
Yeah. And now I think, the platforms are there, with it. So what's next, Jose?
I don't know what's next, man.
What's next for you is
I want to get him and some of the other guys that have been neglected in the Hall of Fame. I have a little section in there who should be in the Hall of Fame.
let's look at that real quick.
Right? And this is just a snapshot because if I were to write a book of everyone who would have been a champ if there were 4 belts and interims, the book would be 1,000 pages and cost $80, right? So this is just a snapshot of what it might have looked like. You got the Pallone version, 81. Page 80. Start on page 83.
So you have Vladimir Klitschko, Willie Meehan.
So you know Willie Meehan?
I do not, to be honest.
Okay, so look at the how many Hall of Famers did Vladimir Klitschko beat?
Not too many.
Zero.
Yeah, so I'm looking. Willie Meehan beat Jack Dempsey, Jack Dillon, Sam Langford.
Why isn't he in the Hall of Fame then?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, right there, Jack Dempsey.
Yeah.
Go down, nothing to take away from the other guys.
Right.
Langford or Dillon, but you know what?
Now, I don't want to take away Klitschko's plaque.
No, I understand what
but
you're
let's
saying.
get Meehan a plaque, right?
Right.
He's overlooked. And now in this 5-belt era, he's going to have a bunch of belts. You turned the page already, right? You remember that guy?
Yes, I do.
Benny Briscoe.
Yes.
Right?
I mean...
Now he's a 2-division champ if we had all those titles.
You're bringing back a lot of names here.
I got Pallone in there, of course.
Of course. Right.
And then I threw in Kid Azteca at the end. Mexican. The father of the left hook to the liver. The Mexican left hook to the liver. He created it.
Wow.
More knockouts than any other Mexican fighter. He's a 4-division champ now. If we had all those belts. Lightweight, junior welterweight, welterweight.
5 wins over Hall of Famers.
Come on now. Why is he out?
Because people don't know it.
Why is he out?
They don't platform it,
Yeah.
They don't platform it.
Joey Archer. Of course he should be in. And I don't want to get into who's better than who's already in. I have absolutely no problem. I believe that everyone who's in deserves it. They got voted in. and they deserve their plaques. But there are too many guys that are getting bypassed. Is what I'm saying.
There is, and let me.
And it's going to get worse because a lot more of the I've actually seen people who vote for the Hall of Fame when that ballot goes out, and they write any recommendations. Who should I vote for? Right, that's what they're saying. I've seen another one who's a pretty famous guy, and he wrote the past, the fighters of the past is not my strong suit. So I consult with somebody to vote on that. So what are you voting for then if that's not your strong suit? And who's this guy that you're consulting with? And give him the ballot instead, right?
Well, do you find, so let's compare it to baseball, right?
Uh-huh.
A lot of old baseball players starting to get put
Yes,
not
yeah.
to take away. So I put it like this way in baseball, being that I played the sport, my criteria of who a Hall of Famer is and who shouldn't be a Hall of Famer, I have my own opinions.
Okay.
I don't want to get into that.
So do you think Bill Mazeroski should be in? In some ways, right?
In some ways,
Yeah.
he should be in because of he was a consistent winner.
One of the most important hits ever.
Yeah. Shot, definitely, and we can go on and on.
Right. But now that opens the door for a lot more guys that should have been in.
Yeah. But baseball is also like there are certain guys getting into the Hall of Fame after they've been on the ballot, maybe because of, writers,
Steroids and all that.
not the steroid thing. Certain players who had okay careers or great careers.
Yeah.
But they're getting in or not getting into the Hall of Fame. To answer your question as far as fighters, we need people who know some of these older fighters because they should be in the Hall of Fame. They're part of boxing.
Yeah.
They're part of boxing history.
They open doors. Give them their place.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Like, okay, I'm trying to think of somebody in baseball that's in the Hall of Fame that was part of the evolution of the game that maybe wasn't a great player, but was a good player. And
Phil Rizzuto?
Rizzuto was part of evolution of the game. People say, you look at Yogi Berra compared to players today. You
No, we
look
don't
at
wanna
him, you hear him. I mean, but he was a winner.
Guy hit home runs like
He hit
crazy.
home runs.
Yeah.
He was in, he was in the right place at the right.
We don't want to underestimate what they're
I'm
doing.
not trying to. I'm not
exactly.
trying to knock.
What he did
people
wasn't
down.
easy.
No, but my point being is, people can go back into that baseball history and know the name. To your point is like, how's a guy voting in boxing if he doesn't know the full history of boxing?
Damn good question that is. Yeah.
Like, you know what? Like, would you want somebody on a board saying, "Hey, we're going to make an important vote," and to getting some of these guys in the Hall of Fame, it's an important thing. And I'm not taking away from anybody who's been voted in.
No, leave them all in. They voted. They got
voted.
it. Good for them.
I just think that there's a bigger of, the people that started this.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, like, if we talk a little bit and we start, there's so many people that we can name that are probably not even in thoughts for the Hall of Fame.
You take a guy like Louis Firpo, right? He finally got in, but a lot of people had the attitude that he lost his most important fight and he got knocked down 11 times, right?
Okay.
Yeah, that was the rep on him. He didn't really know how to fight. Let's take it one step.
Are you looking for something to vote against them? And because we could sit here all day long and pick fighters or athletes apart and say he didn't do
No
this,
one's perfect.
but he did this.
No one's perfect.
Right.
Exactly. Even Sugar Ray Robinson.
Was it a shitty night for him? Obviously, he got knocked down 11 times.
No,
Yeah,
listen. You fight Jack Dempsey.
Yeah.
Prime. You ain't supposed to get up 10 times, right? So now think about what he's doing now. This is a guy, Jack. You know what I'm saying?
But this is like you and me thinking like this, okay? First of all, you get knocked down once and you get back up. But you're getting knocked down 11 times and you continue.
And you knock him out of the ring.
Yeah.
And now you want to get into the controversy. Was it a long count? Did he get pushed back in? We don't even got to get into that, right? Because the case could be made. The case could be made that Firpo had one long count early, so the fight could have probably ended.
Yeah, it is always.
Or it could have ended with Firpo as the winner. That fight could have ended 5-6 different ways, 5 different times, right? But there was a lot of controversy. Even the referee was suspended because of his lack of inaction, right? Firpo's corner, William Muldoon, the commissioner, said Firpo's corner never protested, right? Firpo's corner man was ringside, according to some articles, but he forgot that he was yelling in Spanish, so nobody understood what he was saying. And he was trying to protest. Dempsey, they helped him in, but no one understood what he was saying because he was saying in Spanish, right? So
it's happening so quick.
Exactly. So all this, it's one of the greatest events in boxing history, right? But let's take another look at Firpo. Why did Firpo get that title shot to begin with, right? Because he was the John L. Sullivan of Latin America. You know what I'm saying? This is a guy who started from nothing, a very first fighter to get licensed in Argentina. He had to go to Chile to get fights. You know how he got to Chile? He walked. It's a guy who walked 30 days looking for a fight. He arrived in Chile 25 pounds lighter and 25 shades darker. He's sleeping against trees, right? Now, it was a trade route, though, right? Merchants used to use that route, so it's not like he was completely alone, right? But still, how many people would cross a continent for a fight, right?
People would not do that even if you put them on a plane today. Sometimes
listen, man, I don't even want to cross the bridge to the Bronx sometimes. Yeah.
So we know it's like,
correct,
the sacrifices that these guys made.
Mm-hmm. So, but Firpo was no fool. So Firpo, when he got paid, they was, let's say $100, right? We're gonna pay you $100, and then he would say, you know what? Give me $100 worth of those beans, because he knew he could bring that back to Argentina and sell them for $400. Right? Then when he started fighting in Uruguay, he asked for the promoters to pay him in books. He wanted books on investments, books on film production. So he read those books. He finished reading them. He sold the books, and he opened up his own film company. So all his fights that he had in South America, he had the film rights, and he was playing them in movie theaters in Argentina, Uruguay, Chile, Brazil. So people would come in and watch Louis Firpo against whoever, right? So he was already making money.
Yeah, he was building his platform.
He was the second most famous boxer in South America after Jack Dempsey. So when he got to the U.S., Tex Ricketts said, Firpo, this is the deal. And Firpo said, no, I own my own film rights, right? You could keep them in the U.S., but south of Mexico,
they're his.
And he became a millionaire just off the movies playing.
Yeah,
that's a Hall of Famer right there.
This is boxing at its level of every level, right? Mm-hmm. Not only the fighter struggle, right? A guy thinking on his own. He was promoting himself, other than, we got Floyd as Mayweather promotion. He was promoting himself. He was taking care of.
They're role models.
Yes.
Right. So put them in the Hall of Fame.
Entrepreneurs, able to think. But so now.
So why he got knocked down 11 times against Jack Dempsey, right? Yeah, he kept getting up.
Exactly. And look what happened,
yeah.
Right? But yeah, I agree. We're going to kind of wrap up here, Jose, but I want to kind of what is the move for you now? Where are we finding this?
Amazon.com.
Yep.
I'm going to come out very soon with an ebook version, and I'm getting a lot of requests to put favorite fighters on the cover. So I'm going to start coming out with different editions. I got Mickey Walker coming out on the cover, and all within the next couple of weeks. I'm going to have one with Sugar Ray Robinson on the cover. I had to be careful. I didn't get the rights for some of the photos and stuff, so I got Kid Chocolate coming out on one of the covers, and I got Joe Louis coming out on one of the covers also.
That's awesome.
Yep.
As far as promotional and stuff like this, I know you're heavily involved in the New York area, Ring 8, a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff like that. Are we going to see a little book tour here, you think, or some of the events?
I'm open to it. I don't have plans for it now. We actually had a book signing in Ring 8.
Yep. Yeah, my guy Paulie Haberman down there.
You know him.
Paulie's my guy. Shout out to him.
I met him.
So great advocate.
He got a copy. Yeah, he got a copy.
He's Paul was on the show.
Okay.
And
I didn't see him. All right.
Yeah, great guy. We'll talk a little bit about him offsite. So
next ring meeting, if you're going to be in New York, you got a lot of guys coming down from New England. You know, Hector Bermudez.
I know Hector.
All his fighters are fighting on that July 26th card. And it's the last ESPN card, right? July 26th. They're fighting at the Felt Forum.
Okay.
Or whatever they call it now. They keep changing that name in New York, right? He's coming down with Rohan Polanco and all of them. They're supposed to come to the next Ring 8 meeting. Plus, guess who's going to be the guest speaker? Mark Kriegel.
Oh, Mark Kriegel.
Yeah,
So let's
exactly.
talk off screen about that. I'd
Okay.
like to attend that.
Now,
Yeah, definitely.
his plans he might go. He's going to be in New York at the time, but if he gets pulled away from like an ESPN promo, we don't know. But
Yeah.
he has every intention of coming though.
All right. So real quick.
And real quick, Rosie Perez might make an appearance
Rosie.
also.
Big,
Yeah.
big, shout out to Rosie.
Rosie should be some kind of ambassador award for boxing. She's like a positive image. You get a celebrity fan of some sort. Yeah,
but she knows the sport.
She's like Spike Lee is to the Knicks.
But you listen to her. She's just not a fan. She knows the sport. So real quick on one thing we didn't touch on. Right, I just want to get Serrano Taylor. Big event coming up in New York, July 8th. All female card.
Yeah,
first all female, and I mean. We can go down the line. There's some great fighters. Those two
fights were so great.
There's some great female fighters. Yeah. We got Bumgarner coming back. I don't want to miss anybody out on that. But thoughts on that card? I mean, you're gonna have to add a female section in your book because
I might. The reason why I haven't done it now is I don't consider myself an expert in that field.
I can help you there.
Huh?
I can help you.
I don't want to do them a disservice.
Yeah, we'll do it right. But
okay. So I felt like Amanda was winning the rematch until she got cut, and I think that threw her off a little bit. And Katie's a bull though; she finished strong. So I'm of the opinion that Katie nicked that second fight.
I agree,
but I think the cut affected Amanda. Is what I think. It's a very bad cut.
It changed her tempo in the fight. She played it safe a little bit.
We don't know what would happen, but I'm thinking Amanda might have found the way if she could stay away from the head clashes. I think she might be able to pull it out. The first fight, that was another one that could have went either way. I think Amanda was hitting her hard, but there's no quitting Katie.
No. And see, you know what? I know Katie's trainer Ross, and Katie's been to our gym.
Okay.
In the first fight, Ross did a great job.
What's the last name? Inamit?
Yeah, Inamit.
Yeah, okay.
He did a great job turning the fight around. If you watch in the corner,
in the first fight,
it was around the fifth round.
First fight,
is when his advice and his coaching changed. Second fight, I agree. Katie's a bull class. She can fight. Mm-hmm. So can Amanda. I think the cut kind of
took a little
zip out of her. I like both of them.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think they're great fighters.
I think they're great role models.
I don't know. I got to flip a coin this one. It could go either way.
Well, I heard Amanda is making a lot of adjustments in her training.
I've seen some of clips.
Okay.
She is strong. And I think, as far as a trilogy, and this is going to be one for the book.
And back to your question, should we be seeing trilogies? Yeah,
when
they're as good as this. Yes.
You know what?
Yes.
You got to see this one because
exactly.
You know what? People give the first one to Katie. People say the second one, Amanda. Third one's the charm, ladies. Who's going to take it? And you know what?
This one might be too close to tell either.
This is I think, for boxing alone, is just going to be a great card there.
Yeah.
But, back to my friend Jose Corpas. Listen, boxing fans, you got to give this book a look. I mean, really, it's going to make you think about the sport. You're going to have some great debates. Shoot us a text, shoot us a comment on our page on YouTube. We'll be happy to answer for you. But tell us where we can find it. Amazon now?
Amazon.com. If you want a signed copy, reach out to me on Twitter @CorpusWriter. This is a book, four-belt champ. And now I erased the color bar. There's a lot of black fighters weren't getting title shots back in the day. So I erased that because I was giving belts to whoever was at the top. So now we see Harry Wills as a champ. We see the first black heavyweight champ. It's not Jack Johnson anymore. It's Joe Butler from Philadelphia.
Okay.
So history would have been so different. We don't hear the name Joe Butler. We don't hear the name Harlem Coffee Cooler. We will now that we consider them champions. Now I'm making them worth talking again.
We're keeping the sport of boxing alive. Give them a look. 4-belt era. Jose Corpas, boxing historian, writer. We appreciate your time. And look, honestly, you keep writing. We got like 5 episodes here. So we got to make time somewhere because this could be something that we don't have enough time in 1 hour to kind of give everybody the justice here. Because
I didn't even have enough pages to really put everyone in here.
This is just the first thing. But you know what? Give it a look. I appreciate everybody following us on YouTube. All right. My sponsors, Farmer Strength, Foundation RX in Brookfield. and my guys, Dan at Get Elevated. We appreciate you guys. Check them out. And this is Coach Dave. Train hard, train smart, and we'll see you in the next round.
Thank you, everyone. Keep supporting the sport.